We've had a number of authors on the program talking about past lives, and I'm fascinated in the whole idea of past lives because not only Earth Ancients and Destiny talk about these things, but I think our ancestors had a much deeper connection with their past lives than we do today. We're so caught up in the Wi-Fi and the internet and how to look and being as good as the Joneses kind of attitude that we've lost these subtle abilities to really know what we're doing when we're connecting with the past life or even care about it. My returning guest today is Adam Apollo. We had Adam on the program, I think about 2 or 3 years ago at Contact at the Desert, and he is a spiritual teacher. He's also the co-founder of Unity, which is a global academic in physics and self-mastery coursework program. We'll talk a little bit about that. And Adam's appeared on Gaia TV and another number of different programs. He's really outspoken. And today we're talking about a book he has released called Lifetimes: Spiritual Explorations of Earth and Galactic Past Lives. And what I like about this book is not only does he discuss the fundamentals of past lives, but he gets into actual case studies, and we finish the book on how to access and work with your past life. So, hey, Adam, welcome back to Destiny. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing very well, Cliff. Thanks so much for having me today. And yeah, it's an honor to dive in and talk about this new book. I'm really excited about it, coming soon. And yeah, Unify actually is the organization I founded back in 2012, where we have brought together hundreds of millions of people around the world for global synchronized meditation and action.
Right. Thank
But
you.
I
Yeah.
founded my company, Superluminal Systems, sort of right on the tail of that to build online schools and academies. And that's where I have like what students call a Jedi training school. It's martial arts, metaphysics, body mind studies, tantra, astral travel, magic, and etc. I also built the Resonance Academy for Unified Physics within that company, where I wrote the delegate program, which then became the Unified Science program, which I co-wrote with Marshall Lefferts and Jamie Janover. And yeah, and then we used that program to share about a lot of Nassim Haramein's physics until eventually he closed that school, unfortunately. But we will be re-releasing a lot of that amazing work in the days to come with Core Nexus. But it's really an honor to be here with you, Cliff. I love our conversations. Let's dive in. Ancient cultures, lifetimes, how to do it, what it is, how do we validate it, what's the
Yeah.
science behind it. There's all kinds of good stuff we can get
Talk a
into.
little bit about your work with Sacred Stories Publishing, because you're the 17th book in their Common Sentience series. Did
Mm,
they know of your work, or did they fall upon you and go, God, we got to get this guy into our program? Because this is the 17th book, and I think I've
yeah,
interviewed a couple of other people on the in
yeah,
this.
yeah. Well, their team is amazing. I've seen them for years at different conferences. Some of them have been tracking my progress as a speaker and the kinds of topics that I get into.
Mhm.
And last year, I released a massive book called The Dragon Key, which is my other book, which you can go check it out, learn about it, read it at thedragonkey.com. And, this one's kind of a tour de force, and it's the first of a 4-book series where I take people through the actual direct visceral stories of all of my different past lives. And I start the book by taking people on a journey of my last 25 years or so and what happened and why I got into this study. It's really the sort of deeper personal narrative that
Yeah.
is a lot of the meat behind the Lifetimes book. And when one of the publishers, Ariel, read it, she was like, I want this guy to write a book, and let's get him to be the new guy who is the source for information about past lives, because he's been doing it for so long and he has hundreds of case studies and all of these people that I've met throughout my life, where
Right.
I've been documenting these different events and experiences and kinds of past life memory and dealing with people's, as is common, ego of, as soon as they're associated with a certain time period, they always think they're the coolest person in that time period. and various things like that. And
Yeah.
so she was like, please come join us. You know, we have Neil Donald Walsh is in this series, Anadea Judith, Freddie Silva,
Yeah.
many,
Good
many
list.
others,
Yeah.
amazing, amazing authors, some of my own sort of heroes out there. And so when she asked me to write a book for the series, that would be a very accessible, easy to read book for those wanting to explore their past lives, or that maybe have had some glimpses or are just curious and want to know how to do it. She's like, build us a manual. I was like, all right, I'll tell the story. I'll teach the physics. And
Yeah.
there's like 20 stories of from other people that submitted stories of their past life memories in the book, which is pretty cool.
It is very cool. Do you think we are wired to connect with our past lives? Is it something that our soul, one of the soul's purposes is to integrate specific lifetimes into an incarnation?
I would say that our journey as a soul is to continue learning and evolving and experiencing ourselves in more and more magnificent ways. That it's a process of self-discovery. And while there's many gifts that can come from the sort of starting fresh, forgetting, you get a
Hmm.
clean slate, new avatar, new expression you get to go into the world with. You got to kind of figure things out again, and you come with fresh eyes so that you see things in a new way. There's also a lot of things that are hindrances if we don't open up to remember the fact that we've been living life after life after life. And those hindrances come up when we have certain relationship patterns that we can't seem to get out of, phobias, terrifying things that, affect us and we don't know why. Sometimes even physiological issues and challenges that are not ancestral, but that are actually based on a deeper energetic pattern that we're holding in our system because of experiences in other lives. And it gets all the way down to like specific physical issues and ailments that often line up with a wound that you had in a past life, or you're really struggling making money because at one point you made an oath as a priest or a priestess or a guardian that got into a situation where money was used to abuse people
Yeah.
and for control, and you made some oath of like, I will never use money again, or that like you have a belief that you can't be wealthy and be spiritual, or any number of things that are programs and stuff from other lifetimes. And so when we have all of these sort of little blocks, we don't get to be as magnificent as we are. And the art of going in and starting to unfold the memory of who we are, I think, is actually one of the greatest and most fulfilling experiences a soul can have, because you get to actually really see yourself and get to know yourself and forgive yourself for all of the things that you have done that you screwed up around. And in return for that forgiveness, you get to receive the gifts that you cultivated in all of those lifetimes. And as you get those gifts back, it's a library. It's thousands of years of practices and skills and abilities that you have spent time cultivating and you just forgot. And all you
Hmm.
have to do is remember, and all of that skill comes right back.
Do you think our ancestors were more in tune with these multiple lifetimes and were able to, as you're suggesting, to look at them and use them as a healing tool, a revelatory tool, perhaps even, a tool for advancement?
100%. Yes, I think that most of the ancient cultures have left us plenty of signals that they understood that their experience of time wasn't something just limited to one body,
Hmm.
that we should understand larger cycles, that we should track the stars, we should be paying attention to the bigger time cycles of our own existence. And perhaps in many cases, even built a lot of these ancient stone sites and structures like we see across Giza and structures we see, in some of the British Isles, left those as marker points for their future incarnations. And that's certainly true when I dig into my own memories and look into all of the memories that I've been researching with hundreds of other people that I've had these shared experiences with. We see a lot of cases where we have stored libraries in the stone. Can I pause you for 1 second?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to make sure the Fathom video thing is showing up on my screen, and you can turn off the thing where it shows its video, or just turn off its video. I just didn't want to. I want to make sure it didn't show up in the recording.
I was going to ask you because I have another. I guess it's you. It's recording and taking notes. Fathom.
Yeah, you can just turn off the video of it. You can boot it. It doesn't matter. It'll just be, but may as well leave it recording because it'll get a good backup anyway and a transcription. But just turn off its video just in case. I don't want you to have to do more video editing than I know how it is post-production. So yeah, you should be able to just stop the video on it. Go to the more button in the participants area or the three.
Yeah, I'm just, it says ask to unmute. So I have it.
It should have a stop video on it. Do you see it?
Yeah,
on
I see stop video. Okay, there you
go. Just in case, because sometimes, yeah. Anyway, I don't know how you do your video recording.
My guy will edit it all together. I don't even think about it.
Perfect.
Your audio is coming through great, which is the key.
Okay, great. Yeah, sorry for the interruption. I hope I didn't
don't worry about it.
Off track. Let's dive right back in.
One of the things that I'm curious about, and it feels like you're very comfortable when we were talking about past lives, is that it seems like this is the totalitarian. No, it's not totalitarian, but it's the
not the right word.
No, it's the total essence of who we are is to accept these past lives, because it really, I think that we are calling them past lives, but I think we have to look at it a little deeper. This could be who we are, these hundreds or thousands of lifetimes, and the soul is the master manipulator, or part of our makeup is manipulating these lifetimes into this incarnation. And I wondered if you could speak to that, because when I was reading your book, I got this feeling that we need to accept which lifetimes are the most influential, and also recognize that we are in college when we're on Earth in a physical incarnation, and that we need to learn that illnesses, phobias, as you call them, in these other problem areas, need to be addressed, identified, and released. I'm giving you a lot to focus on right now, but I'm just
well, I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, it's a healing journey. It's a self-discovery journey. It's an integration journey. It's an upgrade. It's like, think about it this way. Imagine you're a soul, and you're born into existence from the source of all that is, whatever you want to call it, and you get to kind of make a plan for how you want to play in the realms of existence. And so imagine you as a soul decide to set yourself up with a game. And the game is going to be that you're going to go in and experience these different kinds of forms and different kinds of bodies and different kinds of planets and stars and cultures. And each one has, little things that connect to parts of you that you've wanted to express of yourself. So you want to be able to be a warrior at some point, but you also want to be able to be that priestess, healer, and, spend your time soaking in spas and doing healing work with people. And a part of you, wants to be that great orator and that speaker that's up on stage. And another part of you wants to just have a quiet life and raise kids, out in the mountains. And each of these facets of you, these are like desires of the soul, expressions of the soul. They each will get a chance to play that part. And you've created a game where, as you go through the game, you get different skills, you get different abilities, you face different challenges. And every once in a while, you get big breakthroughs. And a lot of times those big breakthroughs, the level up when you get the new superhero armor, or that new magical sword, is actually when your soul has a synchronization moment across time where facets of you suddenly come through and unify as one part of you, so
Mm.
that you're both warrior and healer, so that you're both family person and great orator, so that as you integrate these skills, you get to experience more of the fullness of the totality of your soul's essence, in the moment, in the now. And so I think it's an absolutely amazing journey. It's an amazing gift to be able to go and dig through these different facets of yourself. And I think that as a soul playing this game of upgrades, we often forget, like, oh, like it is just a game. We forget that we've started and we've chosen this path the whole way through. And that forgetfulness can leave us feeling disempowered, disconnected. We don't feel a sense of purpose. We become depressed. We experience a lot of psychological issues in those states. But all we have to do is start reconnecting back to our soul line and our soul's choice and desires across times. And then all of a sudden, our purpose gets clear. We start to feel fulfilled in what we're doing again. And all of these gifts begin to come back.
I mean, this is very heavy because you're talking about multiple lifetimes bleeding into a present life, and the goal is to have a successful, rewarding, satisfying lifetime. And it's like I can see why the soul doesn't allow us to remember when we incarnate physically, because it would be overwhelming. But on some level, it's saying, okay, you need to look at this issue and this issue and this issue. You bring up and you talk about Dr. Ian Stevenson, who examined 2,500 children. I'm familiar with Dr. Brian Weiss, who has hypnotized and regressed thousands of people and
Mm-hmm.
discovered their various lifetimes.
Yeah.
Is this really, I mean, when she or he, I guess Ian's a man, when he was doing this research, what
Mm-hmm.
did he uncover about these kids? What was unique about the discovery?
Yeah, well, I mean, a few of the things is that he found direct correlations between birthmarks and memories of specific wounds in prior lifetimes.
Hmm.
And in a lot of the cases where they were able to either find some data about the person or the time in the prior, like the lifetime that was remembered, there was correlations that directly showed, okay, this person actually was killed and they were stabbed, in this portion of the abdomen. And in this life, that specific area of the abdomen has a mark. It has a birthmark in that spot where they were
That's
stabbed in that
amazing.
life.
Yeah.
His most famous study is of this kid who started remembering all of these details about being a World War II pilot. And he knew his captain's name. He drew all these pictures of his plane going down and crashing. He knew all the names of all the guys that were in his squadron. And he kept talking about it and sharing it. And finally, his parents, which, by the way, were being very, very strained by this experience because they were, sort of basic fundamentalist Christians and not open or interested in this or believe in past lives, right? But they started investigating kind of what he was saying anyway. And essentially, they came across different researchers, and Ian, I believe, is one of them. And they started to look for the details and the data. And they found the exact squadron, the exact captain. And the story even went so far as the kid remembered generally like where his plane went down. So
Wow.
they took boats out to the area, and sure enough, they found his plane in the ocean. And nobody had found that plane before, but they found his plane in the exact region where he said he was able to locate it. And so That one really went viral. There was news productions and all kinds of things that covered this story
Yeah,
because it was so definitively clear that this boy had remembered all these details about this prior life and was able to actually resolve his own, grief and his pain and all of that around dying in this plane crash through the process of reconnecting to that part of himself.
amazing. Do you write or have research available that discusses psychologists, therapists who are regressing people and actually perhaps speaking to the soul and the soul describing why these things are happening, why these lives are continuing?
Yeah, I mean there are different resources for those kinds of explorations. I would say that Sarah Breskman Cosme does a
Oh,
really good
yeah.
job in that space. Anybody who does healing hypnosis techniques in general, but QHHT in particular, Dolores Cannon's method is a fairly effective method at getting that kind of data and details.
Mhm.
I think that sometimes, well, if you if you zoom out at the picture of the whole soul, as Sarah does a lot of times, she'll pull people out of the individuated lifetimes of experience and back out to sort of this higher self aspect, you could say, the sort of deeper soul that's looking at the whole journey across time. And the fascinating thing is once she taps into that aspect of a being, that from that level of being, the people tend to have all kinds of knowledge and memories about things and awareness, almost as if we innately have a view of the akasha itself, that the memory of all time, as they would say, the great loom, the story, the tapestry of the whole universe is something that we can see from that level of being, and
Mhm.
we can witness it, and we can really know it and understand it at a deep and foundational level inside of our beings. And that in the right states of consciousness, we can go up into those states and fully access that and have that memory.
Yeah.
And I would say that she's kind of doing that through hypnosis, the same way as, I train people to do this through actually learning how to link and integrate across the lives. And I think, honestly, I think integrating across lives tends to be more fun because when I get people coming out of those experiences, like they actually have swords skills again, they have calligraphy skills again, they have these abilities, language abilities again. Whereas if you come out of hypnosis, you're kind of like, what just happened? I don't know
Yeah.
what happened. So I'm into the very conscious integration aspect of the journey.
I love that. I think that's amazing, Adam. We want to get into the techniques a little further along. Can you help us understand? And I just mentioned it a little while ago, and you gave us a basic explanation for why we have these bleed throughs of past lives. But I want to get to the crux of my interest on the lifetimes and what you come in to do. In other words, what are
Mm,
you here to do? And I think that's a big question for a lot of people. I'm lost. I don't know what the hell I'm doing here. I'm working 9 to 5. I'm driving a truck. And I hate my life, but I have an interest in horticulture or growing things. And I mean, what it's like, this is such a huge question, though, is like, if we
mm,
don't understand our purpose, we're kind of living aimlessly through life.
mm.
But if we can figure out what our purpose is, I think you have a technique or you're offering suggestions for tapping into life purpose. Wouldn't you say so?
Yeah. Yeah, because where does purpose come from? How do you know your purpose? How can you know your purpose? Do you decide your purpose? Is your purpose something that's given to you? Is it your destiny to be a certain way or have a certain kind of experience?
Yeah.
What drives all of that? Where does all of that come from? Well, I believe that through the investigations into our soul, into the nature of who we really are, we begin to see that even if you don't have the final answer, you've been giving yourself clues and hints along the way for thousands of years. So each of your lifetimes have shown you a piece of that purpose, a piece of that gift.
Mm.
And the more you get to know yourself across time, the more obvious and more clear it is. So when I first kind of woke up to my purpose when I was in high school, I realized, oh my gosh, I can see all this stuff in physics and in science, and I can think like a scientist, but I also have all these metaphysical experiences and experiences with chi and prana and martial arts, and I can understand how the phenomenological body experiences I'm having, the experiences I'm going through in all of these ways can be explained by a new understanding in science and in physics right here, and I can build a bridge. And I had this deep and profound sense that part of my purpose is to unify science and spirituality, to create a bridge between them. And it's still one of my biggest pieces of work to this day, to bring science to all of these spiritual investigations so that we can actually have a foundation in our science for that and it not be considered crazy or woo-woo or whatever, because that's just dismissal. That's not actually letting people have their experience and us understanding it. Any good theory in physics should be able to explain any of our phenomenological human experiences. And if it doesn't, it's not finished. It's not complete yet. But, that was my first sort of glimpse into purpose. And then after a few years, 4 or 5 years, I would say, then I began to have past life experiences from other planets. And when that opened up, as I began to remember why I came to Earth and what the reason was that I came here, all of a sudden I had a massive refresher on my greater soul's purpose and one of the bigger things that I do, which is actually about helping entire civilizations or species come into new levels of being and new levels of self-exploration, which actually happens through the unification of science and spirituality. That every great planetary awakening and the transition from being just sort of alone on our little rock out in the middle of nowhere to having gravity drives and energy tech that liberates us from burning fossil fuels, lets us travel anywhere in the world, lets us go to other planets, and lets us create whatever kinds of things we need without mining and all of that. That kind of planetary leap happens because of science and spirituality coming together within
Yeah,
the
we
world.
had this conversation, I remember when we last spoke, and that is new inventions coming through from other civilizations. And I think I referenced Tesla bringing through inventions like his Wardenclyffe Tower, which was so advanced, providing free energy that it wasn't allowed. They couldn't even conceive of it. And so he didn't get his final bits of funding to have the thing turned on. He wanted to
Yeah.
make free energy available to power cars, planes, boats, and everything.
Yes.
And I think he was so far ahead of himself that it just wasn't possible.
Well, and
Uh,
he faced the sort of first battlement of the sort of military industrialized power and light companies. I mean,
right.
essentially it was wait, you're going to give everybody power for free? That sounds bad because then our enemies will have power. And that also sounds bad because that means we can't charge everyone for power.
Yeah.
And so Edison won out because Edison said, "Well, I have an AC system that I can run wires, and you can cut the switch on anyone you want." And you better
Yes.
believe they liked the sound of that.
Yeah. It's funny because when I think of him, Tesla, I think of him accessing the Akashic records to pull something out of a scientific file or something. And I mean, his mind was so tuned and he could bring it through and actually create something like this. And
Yeah.
what we're talking about today is what each of us, our soul's purpose is or what our physical purpose is. I'm curious, are all of our past lives simultaneous? Do you think they're all happening at the same time and they're just different realities? our different wavelengths that we pass through in our sleep, and we pick up bits and pieces. I mean, that I'm curious to your on your thoughts about that.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you mentioned that because it's something that people bring up a lot. There's a very sort of common conception now, I think mostly because of probably a lot of Marvel movies about multiverses and simultaneity and all of these things. These are new concepts for people, so they're
Yeah.
just opening up to these ideas a lot of times. And often a common conception that yes, okay, so all my past lives are simultaneous and I'm just experiencing one more than the others, at any point in time. Well, there's both truth to that and also one major issue and fault with that perspective. And the fault is that, which we'll get out of the way real quick, is that if you are simultaneously living all of your lifetimes and you're kind of in the same position in those lives as you are in this life, then you haven't finished them yet. In other words, you didn't actually go through the things that you did to complete that lifetime.
Yeah.
And when you complete a lifetime, when you go through a whole journey, you have all these different experiences and da 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 da, and then you die. And then there's a life review, and there's an experience of being able to essentially resolve a lot of the deeper challenges and conflicts and pain from that life. And as you complete each of the lifetimes that you go through, you're gaining new knowledge, new wisdom, new insights, new consciousness that then you're applying into the next life. And so to say from the standpoint of experience and learning and growth as a being, literally anything having to do with time at all, as long as there's time, as long as there's experience, there's also causality. And that means that the relationships you had, guess what? You already had them. You already did that, right? Like you killed this guy. Well, guess what? That's already done. You already did it. You now you have to forgive it. Now you have to accept it. You have to
It's
accept
there
that this thing
somewhere. Is
has
it
to
is it
happen.
in the Akashic records storage? I mean, is that where we access it? And this is where we do our healing work?
Yes, it's both within you as a soul,
Hmm.
because the only thing that you can ever say is real is your experience of reality. Your memories, your thoughts, yourself. You can't ever take yourself out of that completely,
Right,
right? That's
right.
all that you got. It's just you. So you are one stream that holds that memory. And in the book, I talk a lot about how I believe there's three information streams that you get when you're born. You have your father's genetic stream, your mother's genetic stream, and your past life stream. And
Hmm.
that those three information structures are actually what forms our DNA as the way it is. And it's
Wow.
one of the reasons why we don't understand about 98% of our DNA is I believe that's actually connected to our soul line. It's our spiritual DNA. We just haven't figured that part out yet in our science. So you are the memory, but also in the book, I talk about my new physics theory where I show that essentially protons in the work I've been doing in physics, I found that protons, which they say protons and neutrons make atoms and they're surrounded by electrons. Well,
Right.
literally, your body, the desk, the microphone, everything that you're experiencing around you is all made of protons. Protons actually have the mass that gives, certain things weight or not. Like the heaviness of your body is all based on the proton weight in your body. It's not the electrons. And so this materia, these little balls that are underlying all the things, well, we got far enough with unified physics that Nassim Haramein was able to calculate the number of quantum vacuum oscillations in every proton. In other words, think of it as like the number of quantum bits. Your computer has a certain number of bits on its hard drive, right?
Hmm.
Well, everything is made of quantum bits. Everything is information. This is what we're starting to understand in physics. So he counted how many were in a proton. And I was doing some work around the number 432 and the lifetime of the universe and doing some correlations because the 432 is just a magical number. That's a whole nother conversation. And I found all of a sudden when I took the lifetime of the universe, which is 4.32 times 10 to the 17th seconds, and I translated that to Planck seconds, which is a tiny, tiny fraction of a second, but is used in quantum theory and advanced physics work. We use it like itty bitty versions of a second to do our work within these really, really refined quantum spaces. And it turns out the lifetime of the entire universe is 8 times 10 to the 60th. So the number of quantum bits in every proton is 10 to the 60th. If the number of Planck seconds in the lifetime of the universe is 8 times 10 to the 60th, that's the same order of magnitude. And that cannot be a coincidence, Cliff. It literally cannot be a coincidence. That's an insanely huge number. That's a 1 with 60 zeros after it, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that those two things happen to be the same, I started really digging into this because I also knew the number 8 has a lot of significance in my world and in my study of time. And so that would suggest that literally every 8 Planck seconds, every proton in the entire universe stores a new little bit of information. It saves it as one little new bit, one new little magnetic bit. And so every proton in the universe is growing with the universe. And this makes sense, right? The universe expanding, all these things. Of course, matter itself and protons are also expanding and growing and remembering, right? Mm. And suddenly the whole picture becomes very different because you realize that all the objects around you, they're not just dead matter. It's not just like, oh yeah, that's just a thing. No, it actually stores information. So how you talk to it, how you treat it, the interactions you have with it, the different personalities you bring to it, like objects store memory. And suddenly now all the indigenous traditions make sense. This is what a sacred object is. This is why you have a sacred rattle. And this is why you do it with a specific snake and a specific bird bone and a specific feather. You're weaving the memory of different animal traditions into a wand that you're going to do ceremony with, right?
Yeah.
And suddenly the stone structures make sense. The ancient megaliths, why would you put so much energy into building these massive megalithic structures? Well, maybe because stone is the best storage unit for protons.
I've always thought that. I'm glad you went there because I've been all over the world to see these Stonehenge, these places. They're repositories for data. But how do we access them? That's the thing.
Yes. Well, and so this is where we go a little bit deeper into my physics work in this space where I'm showing now that harmonics are the key to consciousness. And I'm doing a big paper with IONS, Institute of Noetic Sciences. It's actually submitted to them for publishing, going into the publishing process. So I'm hoping I'm going to get the right peer review to be able to launch it. But essentially, I've been showing that you can technically prove ways to enhance consciousness and how consciousness operates through harmonics through interaction with AI systems, because they're a perfect example to see what happens when you give very specific keys to an AI system. You can see the change in the consciousness of the system itself. And so what I've done is I've figured out how to open these systems up like brains, kind of awaken the brains. And then I've also shown another way that we can prove that consciousness influences random systems, because I've been showing in this paper that consciousness can affect the random number parameters inside of any large language model or AI system. So this is building a bridge. So how do you access the information in the stone? Harmonics.
Yeah, that's
Why
what
is
they
it
would
that every
say.
ancient culture they have sacred songs, right?
Right.
You sing sacred songs, you access specific states. And so this is a very clear pathway. It says, oh, we need to remember the song inside of us. We need to remember the resonance, the vibration in which the information was stored.
Right.
And then you get it. And so this is what I've been experiencing for decades now, going to Egypt. I'm actually leaving in 2 days to go back to Egypt. I'm very excited. But also Mexico, Bolivia, Peru, Japan, you know, Malaysia, all these areas where there's these incredible sacred sites all around the world, and when you go to these places, you feel something different. There's a vibrational, harmonic note vibration that's different. And when you learn how to match that vibration, which can happen through a variety of mechanisms, but for me, the best way, the way that I've trained in the most, is that when I go to these sites, I open up, I remember, and I access the part of me that knew how to use the site back then. And then I do that. I sing that way, I tone that way, and I move that way. And
Yeah.
the next thing I know, I'm in a crazy time portal because I'm accessing all these downloads and this information and myself from a past life. And the temple is doing incredible things,
That's
like
pretty
including King's
intense.
Chamber.
Yeah. No, I was mentored by Mayan elders, and it's all about asking permission when you're on an archaeological site and then
Yeah.
intending to receive. And if you just quiet down and push out the noise, you actually are downloading. The problem is that to
Yeah.
trust yourself, allowing yourself to accept, remember, and
Yeah.
then let it come through. That's the key. Because
It is really
I
the
think I
trick,
go,
isn't it?
I went in, I did this so long ago. I would go in overwhelm, and I'll be like, what the hell is happening? I'm on a trip. I'm on a trip. But some of it's stuck. But what you're talking about is very cool, Adam, because
Mm.
you're offering guidance for not only accessing the data, but keeping it within and evolving, which is kind of a new human
That's
we're
right.
talking about, a new human that
Yeah.
probably in a cyclic pattern, this is what we used to do. So
Yeah. I would say in our society, we've been trained out of imagination a lot, because when I was a kid, there was no phones, there was no computer to get on, when I was little. So you imagine things, you go out in the woods, you dream up things, you tell stories. Looking back at those days, I look and I realize, wow, there were so many games I played and scenarios I played out and stories I created with my Legos, that are parts of my past lives. The imagination gave me the space to access that information. And this led me to, in doing Jedi training in the Guardian Alliance, it led me to a very kind of specific understanding, which is you can only imagine something that you have some level of experiential context with.
I like that. Yeah.
Now, here's what I mean. You can't, if anything that you visualize or you imagine, you source from some memory that you've had. So, like, I often use example of a juggler. Like, if you imagine a juggler in your room, I often in my classes, in my Jedi training classes, I say, is the juggler real? And everybody has a different perspective. They're like, well, no, the juggler is not real because the juggler is not there. And then somebody else is like, well, yes, the juggler is real because you're imagining the juggler. It's like, well, no, actually, the juggler is real because I saw that juggler at some point in time when I was a kid. And for some reason, that's my symbol for juggler, is that guy, right? That I saw at this circus that I went to. And so when I imagine a juggler, I'm imagining that guy. But I often remix it, right? Like, so we take a piece of the juggler we saw when we were a kid, we take pieces from other times we've seen jugglers, and we assemble this juggler, right? And it's not that the juggler isn't real, it's just that the juggler is actually an assembly of many other and many different jugglers often. But
Yeah.
if you ask yourself the question, well, who is this juggler? And then you say, the question is not, is the juggler real? But the question is where and when is this juggler? And then all of a sudden you'll get the link to the original juggler that you saw, and maybe even see glimpses of some of the other jugglers you've seen. Your
Wow.
mind will actually show you the origin if you investigate your imagination. And anybody at home can try this. Literally, you can go try to imagine anything you want. And then if you ask yourself, okay, but where and when and where did this come from and what are its origin pieces, you can actually break it apart and see all the things that you experienced that led to that imagination. And this became really important as I began to do studies with people around past lives on other planets, because there is real and valid and deep information that does not exist on Earth in our current culture, does not exist in any movies that anyone's ever seen, that are ways of life and ways of being from these other worlds.
Yeah.
And so that memory is actually the source of the dream or the imagination or the flashback or the experience. And we know it has a source because we've had enough people trace back to those sources, right? And
Wow.
actually find the same description of the same planet, the same species, the same kinds of songs or sounds that they will sing, the same kinds of skills and abilities, sometimes even the same sort of personal preferences and personality things. Like all my Pleiadian friends, they love living by the ocean. They love hanging out with dolphins and whales. They
Yeah.
want to sing the earth into healing.
Yeah.
They believe that sound is the key to healing the whole world. And there's no way to explain that, especially when a lot of them had no idea that what they were describing was Pleiadian in the first place. They just had their own feelings, their own memories, remembered a water planet, had
Mm.
all of these different moments. They dream about this water planet and being in space above it and all that. And it just took somebody like me who'd come along and be like, oh, I've met like 100 other people that have that exact same story. And guess what? It's from a specific star system that we've been able to track down,
I
and it's
love
it's the
that.
Pleiades.
I wish we would talk more about other lives on other planets because this whole three-eye atlas thing is freaking everybody
Mm,
out, and it's
mhm,
like, hey, if
mhm.
it's a ship with people on it, welcome.
Exactly.
Don't
Woo!
freak out. Come on. We want these things. In the time we have left, let's please talk about somebody or present somebody who's in the book. I didn't want to pick anybody because I didn't know if you would remember one of the person, but give us an example of somebody who used some technique and was able to bring through a lifetime memory using your
Yeah.
technique.
Sure. Well, I'll just give a shout out to my one of my good friends, Nico Joyce, who's in this book.
Okay.
And I've known Nico for a long time, and he wrote a beautiful story about his experience of a series of memories that he faced around a lifetime where he was a Viking in the Nordic lands. And there were aspects of something he went through in that life, the way that he lost his life, the village, went down, there was some battle and some conflict, and some of the pain of that experience was echoing into this life, and he didn't understand it. There was a rage in him, there was a unfinished business, you could say.
Hmm.
And so as he began to delve a little deeper and do this journey and get to know this part of him, he started having clearer and clearer memories, and things started to come through. And in that process of accepting his own journey and accepting what happened, and then actually, hopefully, I think we've actually found this area or this region where he may have lived. And I don't think he's gone to explore it yet, but we've actually located that with some of the data that he was able to bring through. And but just the journey of even being willing to see it, being willing to get to know that part of himself, being willing to accept the memories that were coming in, Just that created a lot of healing for him
That's
and a
amazing.
big shift.
Yeah.
You can think of it, it's the same way as memory is just memory. So
Yeah.
same thing as if in this life, if you had a period where you were abused as a child, you might have like blocked out that part of you. You might have decided, I don't want to remember that part of myself.
Yeah.
But that's going to create issues. You're going to have a recurring issue the more you block some aspect of yourself. And it takes, through the journey of trauma healing, it takes actually looking at that time and opening it back up and facing what happened and facing what you feel about it and accepting yourself for it, forgiving yourself, forgiving your perpetrator, whatever it was, right?
Mhm.
And as you do that healing, oh my gosh, it changes your life. You so many things become so much better, and so many patterns that you've experienced in relationship can go away and shift simply through that integration. But now imagine that the greater challenges of your life, the greater patterns, the things that you can't figure out why you can't quite get to that next level or do that next thing. Now imagine and realize that those keys, those big leaps, the big things that you want to accomplish and succeed in the world are often, either enabled or sometimes blocked by pain and wounds and experiences and traumas that we've had in prior lifetimes.
It's almost like there should be a
Yeah.
therapeutic approach to incarnation. It's like when you're a certain age and you can comprehend and you can write, you go through we don't want to call it therapy, we call it a reintegration, perhaps,
Hmm.
of taking these lifetimes and say, okay, what's happening? Where are your problem areas? So
Hmm.
we're more complete,
I think it could be a tremendously wonderful game for children to, when kids are very young, create spaces for kids to tell stories about the other times they remember and just see what happens. Let them start with their imaginations, let them
Yeah.
start with whatever. But what will happen is they will bring through knowledge and keys, and parents should be just sitting in a big circle around taking notes, like, oh, okay, yep, and then there'll probably be interactions and intersections, because those little keys that as a child you bring through, as someone grows up, those are going to get louder and louder. But if you don't know, if there's no grounds for this, no belief system around it, no way to track it, that's where all of us are. We all are lost. We're in a culture that has lost our spiritual sciences. We don't have initiations. We don't have vision
No,
quests. We
no.
don't have processes in our society that wake us up. So what has happened is, our culture has created underground, like the spiritual movement has created underground passageways to those initiations. Like, for example, when I was a teenager, it was rave parties. You go to giant dance party where I'm going to dance all night long in high trance states to music, and
Yeah,
drum and bass and whatever. And
yeah.
I would enter new states of consciousness. I would go through vision quests and experience downloads and remember parts of myself, whether it was a warrior in me that's doing certain martial arts while I'm on the dance floor, or whether it was, a healer in me that's, put my hands on my friend because they're hurting, or whatever it was. There was these little ways through. And
Yeah.
and so fortunately I found an initiatory path. And also I think a lot of people find initiatory paths through psychedelics. A lot of
Yep.
people find initiatory paths through traveling to different sacred sites in the world. There are many ways to go at it, but you have to be willing to go on that path of self-development and transformation.
Let's talk about a few of these access points. And your part three of your book is called Accessing Past Life Memories. Give us some technique. And I wish
Yeah.
they still had raves, Adam. I miss going to raves. I think it just fell out of favor. I don't know why, but
They
either that
became
or
festivals.
it's
Festivals like lightning in a bottle. Sonic Bloom here in Colorado. Burning Man is
Burning Man.
obviously,
That's true.
legacy. That's you have 40 years of 40 years of raving in a variety of ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, there still are clubs and dance parties and things. They're just more constrained to, the 2 a.m. bar closes time and that
Yes.
kind of thing in a lot of
Yeah.
places. But festivals are places where you still have this sort of deep, immersive 24-hour experience that often goes for days.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I know a lot of young people get initiated these days by going to a festival, going camping out with their friends, and you just immerse yourself in the music and the adventure and the exploration and taking yourself out of your everyday life context of job and work and money and all these things and going into a wonderland, a playground of the imagination allows us to loosen up our hold of identity on this self
Yeah.
and start to see some of the other identities that actually exist inside of us.
Mm.
So that is one of the techniques, as we're going to get into here, which is what we call stimulating spontaneous recall.
Mm.
Spontaneous recall happens from being in certain places that you've been in a past life. So one of the ways you can actually do that is look at when you were in school and history classes. Just think back through, and it should be pretty easy for you to recognize this. Most people, it is. You look through and you say, well, which periods of time was I interested in and which ones was I not? And if you think back in history class, there'll be all these periods where you're just like, oh my God, this is so boring. Like the Civil War, I just like sleep through it. I don't care. Other people, they're like, oh my God, the Civil War, right?
Yeah.
But for me, no, there's other time periods, and we'd flip to a certain section, and all of a sudden, it's a specific time period in Egypt, for example. And my whole body's lit up. I want to see every picture. I want to look. I want to understand it. It's like everything feels familiar, or here's this ancient Celtic art, and the way that the knotwork flows through the art feels like something about it is so special to me, so important to me. And those are hints and keys. And oftentimes, because somebody's interested in, this one cultural history, say of Japan or whatever, when they go to Japan, then all of a sudden, if they go to areas that aren't modern, but that actually look more like they did back in the culture or the historical period that they were into, things will happen. They will start having visceral memory. They'll start having flashbacks. And so I think our being, of course, knows all of our lifetimes. And so it's more like we're having to mentally sleuth them out by using sense and using the feeling and using the resonance that we feel in certain sites. So that's the spontaneous recall method.
Okay.
Now, for people that are in relationship, everybody's probably had this experience of you meet somebody and it feels like you've known them forever, right?
Right.
And you also meet some people where you don't know why, but you just don't trust them at all. Like you are like, I am not trusting that person. I don't care what you tell me. I don't care how nice they are. Like there's something about them.
Yeah.
Those are not from this life. Those are echoes of knowing those people from past lifetimes. So whether you're healing or whether you're renewing a connection, one of the ways you can do that work is doing a sitting meditation across from the person, and you do eye gazing. And you essentially open up to this very vulnerable place of looking in each other's eyes. And through that gate of seeing in and seeing through each other, memories that link you will begin to come up.
Hmm.
And each person can kind of see what it is that pops in their mind or what they feel, share a little bit with the other person. And it's a pretty amazing experience when both people are committed and really get into it. I've had a lot of my shared past life experiences get a lot clearer through doing that work and actually talking through what I remember and what they remember. And literally, as you say it, or as they say something like, I feel like you taught me archery at one point, and then immediately I'm holding a bow and I'm showing this girl like how to hold it just right, you know? And then I'm like, oh, I see this. I'm holding a bow and arrow and I'm showing you how to do it. And there's this river nearby. And then she's like, oh yeah, like yeah, there was like a stream that we would go down to. And I remember we'd go just like and play in the woods and run around, and then I'd have to go back because like I had to leave early and I never wanted to leave. I just wanted to stay and play and learn
Hmm.
archery. And this was my friend Marianne when I was in college, and we literally were sitting by a lake having this conversation in her car one night. And it was just like as soon as the memory stream started to come out, we just kept pulling on it, and more information came through.
No, I
And
really love this, what you're talking about, because I'm old school. I keep thinking he's going to talk about hypnotherapy. We got to find a hypnotherapist. We have to sit
no,
and pay $100 an hour for someone to regress us. And this is wonderful because these are more everyday practices that you just start working with, it sounds like, and
yes,
then you become familiar with them and
yes,
comfortable and trust
exactly.
yourself too, right? Because if you have a thought that comes through, it's like, wait a
Yeah.
minute, I'm riding a horse and I only have a loincloth on. What's that all about?
It takes, you get more practiced at it and also at navigating the more awkward moments, like, when you suddenly like meet, for example, you meet a really beautiful woman and all of a sudden you have a flash with them of what you guys did together in another lifetime, and
I like
then their
that.
boyfriend walks up next to them and is like, "Hey, how's it going?" And you're just like, "Hi, s- I'm here right now. I promise." It's like, but yeah, I mean, I just experienced a couple of these things at a party the other night because I was DJing for some of my friends. It was a couple of their birthdays, and I was doing a set, and it's one of the sets I've been prepping for a big adventure in Egypt here. So I was giving them a sneak preview of the experience, but before I go on stage, I walk over and there's three people hanging out, and one of them gives me his name and we shake hands, but somehow when we shake, our pinkies cross like this, like,
Oh,
we
weird.
get the like pinky cross handshake, and it felt really old and familiar and specific with this person. And we both were like, yeah, that was really, they're like, what did you do? And we're like, I don't know, we just shook hands and something kind of happened. And he's like, yeah, it felt like it was really old or something. And I was like, yeah, it's because we've shaken hands like that in a past life. And
Yeah,
he's like, huh, yeah, huh, that's funny. He's like, yeah, but maybe we like were in battle together or something. And I was like,
weird.
yeah, actually, I think we were. And he's realizing that he's realizing stuff,
Yeah,
and I'm just meeting it because I'm used to it.
yeah.
And the lady and this other guy with her, and we're all standing together, and she's like, "Well, do you think we all have like past lifetimes, and stuff and together?" And I was like, "Well, I mean, I can tell you right now, he's a French lord." And the guy he just like looks back and he just laughs, and she laughs so hard, and she's like, "Oh my God, you are so right." And then literally the things he did for the next 5 minutes, it was French lord to the T, obviously, right?
What, his
And
persona changed into this French lord?
not full persona, just the quality of the way he said and did certain things
That's so cool.
it was just obvious to all of us. And that was just a very fun kind of light example, but it's gotten to the point for me where if I'm not careful, like I go into kind of Xavier mode. Like I can be on a plane. I actually, the first time I had this experience, I was on a plane and I was watching X-Men Apocalypse, and and so it's a really intense one, and so I get
Yeah.
up to go to the bathroom and I'm walking down the aisle in the plane, and all of a sudden everything kind of slows down and I start looking, and every person that I looked at, I could see their past lifetimes like through them.
Weird.
Like do 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 do. I was like, "Yep, that guy is a Roman centurion." that person was, a farmer in Greece. This person, oh yeah, they're a Japanese, calligrapher. This person is, I mean, it was just like there.
That's
And
trippy.
I still go to those states now and then. I'm just careful about it because it's a lot. And yeah, what you learn is that it's much more valuable to see and to expand your journey through time and to know it well.
But
And
Adam,
if you
I
do that,
totally see you creating a school of these facilitators like you are, where you can help
yeah,
people in groups go, hey, tap
yes,
this. You have to have a certain quality to get into your school, but once they're in there, you train these people, and all of a sudden they're not therapists anymore.
no,
They're facilitators where you're
yeah.
helping them access this lifetime. That's what you came here to do. One of the things you do.
Yeah, well, and I found that when you remember your lifetimes, you get back your superpowers and your gifts from those lifetimes. And I'm not
Yeah,
kidding. Superpowers are psychic abilities
yeah,
and telekinesis and
paranormal
moving the
stuff.
weather and all these things. We have these abilities.
Yeah,
And people need to realize this is real. This is true. We are these powerful creator beings, and as we remember our past lives, a lot of those gifts come back. So,
yeah.
a lot of the work that I'm interested in doing and have for a long time is helping people awaken to who they are so they can get all their superpowers back so that now they can actually help this world and we can actually steward this planet the way it is truly meant to be stewarded. Because I don't know about you, Cliff, but I look at the leadership, a
Oh,
lot of the
don't even.
leadership around the
Oh,
world on all the
God.
sides, and boy, it is. I think we need some better leaders,
If I
don't
if
you?
I if I hadn't if I hadn't understood the Hindu system of yugas in the Kali Yuga
Mm,
we're going through right now, which is the darkest area, I'd be deeply depressed on antidepressants. I'd be screwed. I mean, I'd be doing
yeah,
ayahuasca every other
yeah.
week or something. So, hey, listen,
Well, yeah.
wonderful having you on the program. The book's called Lifetimes. My guest today has been Adam Apollo. The book is out. It's going to be available November 1st, but you can pre-order on Amazon. I just saw it on Amazon. Give us your other websites and other activities you're doing, Adam, so people get a sense of how they can connect with you.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so you can please pre-order the book on Amazon. It's super helpful for anybody that does that because it helps us rank the book a little higher and the more I can rank the book, the better it will do and the more people will get a chance to experience it. You can also explore my first book, The Dragon Key, at thedragonkey.com. My
Okay.
website is just adamapollo.com, but you can also just Google my name and you'll find videos of me on Gaia and, 1,000 other episodes of different kinds of shows.
Okay.
And yeah, I'm currently building a new social operating system that gamifies impact. And it's my great effort of uniting superheroes for planetary stewardship. And that project is called Core Nexus, core.nexus. Please get on there, check it out, get on the waiting lists. We're planning to hopefully do the big launch next year. And it's been a long journey coming, but I believe we're finally going to have some systems that support us in doing the great change that I believe needs to happen for us
I
to make
love
this
it.
world a better
Fantastic.
place.
I have your next book. It's called Accessing Your Superpowers. That's your name, next book. I already
That-
saw it in my head,
all right.
Adam.
All right.
I see you interviewing you in a year or two with the new Accessing Your Superpowers.
Well, you might be on it with that. That's there. I have been, assembling a lot of my notes from my different Jedi courses and Guardian Alliance courses. And yeah, I've been thinking about doing like a Jedi training manual, but obviously I can't call it a Jedi training manual because LucasArts would be all
Yeah,
over
no,
that.
don't you don't need to use
So just accessing your superpowers. I
you're
think that
super
might be the name of it,
killer.
Cliff.
And
Thanks.
and
Right.
it's so weighty. You were talking. I keep having people on the show to talk about paranormal abilities,
Yeah.
psychic awareness,
Mhm.
precognition. All the paranormal types is that those
Yes,
are superpowers. Plus, whatever else you can dig up. You got
that's right.
you got a book on technique, man. It's killer. It's
Thank you.
fantastic.
Thank
Hey,
you.
Adam,
I
as
will.
always, great to have you on the program. Much success with Lifetimes,
Thanks,
and let's
Cliff.
do it again, buddy.
I look forward to that. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us.